Open your wallet right now. Maybe a few notes, a debit card, some loose coins. To you, this is obvious. This is how money works. To your ancestors, there is no wallet, there is no money, there is no price. There is only one question that matters. How much grain do I owe you for that goat? And the answer to that question, over thousands of years, destroyed empires, started revolutions, and built the entire modern world you live in. But the story of how humans first dealt with inflation is darker, stranger, and more brutal than any economics textbook will ever tell you. To understand it, you have to go back to the very beginning of money itself. Before coins existed, humans traded in grain. In ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, around 3000 BC, the temples functioned like the first central banks. Priests collected grain from farmers. They stored it in massive granaries, and they issued clay tablets, receipts, that said, you have this much grain on deposit. Those tablets were the world's first money. But here's the problem. Grain rots. It gets eaten by rats. It shrinks in storage. Every single year, the amount of grain in the granaries was slightly less than the tablets promised. This was the world's first inflation, and nobody planned it. Nobody wanted it. It just happened, because food decays and promises don't. The priests had a problem. They had issued more receipts than they had grain to back them. Sound familiar? Their solution was brutal in its simplicity. They declared a debt jubilee. Every 50 years or so, all debts were canceled. All grain receipts were wiped clean. Everyone started over. This wasn't charity. It was engineering, a controlled burn to prevent a wildfire. Then came metal, and metal changed everything. Around 600 BC, the Kingdom of Lydia, now Western Turkey, minted the first official coins from electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. The coins were stamped with the king's face. The king's face meant the king's promise. This coin is worth what I say it is worth. And immediately, kings discovered something intoxicating. If you shave a tiny sliver of silver off the edge of each coin before you spend it, just a sliver, almost undetectable, and you do that to 10,000 coins, you have just created a pile of silver from nothing. It was called coin clipping. And every government that has ever existed has been tempted by some version of it. The Romans turned it into policy. In the early Roman Republic, a silver coin called the denarius contained about 4.5 grams of pure silver. By the time of Emperor Nero, around 60 AD, the silver content had dropped to around 90%. By 200 AD, it was under 50%. By 268 AD, under Emperor Gallienus, the denarius was barely 2% silver. They had coated copper coins in a thin wash of silver. You could rub it off with your thumb. What happened next was not complicated. Merchants figured it out. They demanded more coins for the same goods. Prices doubled, then doubled again, then again. In the 200s AD, prices in the Roman Empire increased by over 1,000% in less than 50 years. Soldiers hadn't been paid in good silver. Farmers couldn't buy tools. The army began to fall apart. Supply chains collapsed. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome had over 50 different emperors. Most of them were assassinated. Historians call it the crisis of the 3rd century. Economists call it what it actually was: hyperinflation. Rome didn't fall because of barbarians alone. Rome fell because it could no longer afford itself. And it could no longer afford itself because its money had become a lie. But then, as always, humans found a way to break it. When people lose faith in money, they don't stop trading. They find something else, something real, something that can't be debased. In Roman Egypt, during the worst of the inflation, papyrus records show farmers paying rent in wheat instead of coins. Soldiers demanded payment in olive oil and cloth. Tax collectors started accepting goods directly. The entire economy quietly reverted to barter, not because people chose to go backwards, because they had no choice. The money had become worthless, and a jar of olive oil at least was still a jar of olive oil. This same thing happened in Zimbabwe in 2008, when inflation reached 89 sextillion%, that is an 89 followed by 21 zeros, and people traded eggs and airtime minutes as currency. It happened in Weimar, Germany in 1923, when people famously needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January cost 200 billion marks by November. And it happened in medieval Europe, when plague and wars disrupted trade so badly that the most stable currency in parts of England was salted fish. Every time official money breaks down, humans find the same solution. Find something that rots slowly. Find something everyone needs. Make that the money. But the most interesting response to inflation in human history wasn't grain, wasn't barter, and wasn't salted fish. It was trust. In the Chinese Tang dynasty around 600 AD, merchants developed a system called fei qian, flying money. The problem they were solving was physical. Carrying large quantities of copper coins across China was dangerous, slow, and exhausting. So merchants deposited coins in a city, received a paper certificate, traveled across the empire, and redeemed that certificate for coins on the other end. No coins physically moved, just paper, just a promise. This was the world's first paper money, and it worked because of something that has no physical form at all: reputation. The merchants who ran the deposit houses had to be trustworthy enough that strangers would accept their paper as payment. The Song dynasty eventually took this over and issued official government paper notes, jiaozi, backed by reserves of copper coins. And immediately, you can already see where this is going, they issued more notes than they had copper to back them. Within a generation, the notes lost most of their value. Inflation again, different technology, same human instinct. Print more than you have, spend what you don't own, hope nobody checks. So what actually worked? The honest answer is, nothing worked permanently, because inflation is not a technical problem. It is a human problem. Every solution ever invented, grain receipts, metal coins, paper notes, gold standards, central banks, has eventually been bent by the same force. The force of people in power needing to pay for things they cannot afford. Wars, famines, monuments, armies. The Roman emperor debased his coins because the empire needed to pay legions it couldn't afford. The Song dynasty printed extra notes because the government needed revenue it couldn't collect. Weimar Germany printed marks because it owed war reparations it couldn't pay. The mechanism changes. The math stays the same. More money chasing the same goods means each unit of money buys less. This is not modern economics. This is physics. It has been true since the first priest issued more clay tablets than he had grain. And here is the thing that should stop you. You are living through inflation right now. Not hyperinflation, not Weimar, but the same slow erosion that has happened to every currency in human history. The dollar in your wallet today buys roughly what 2 cents bought in 1913. The pound sterling has lost about 99% of its value since the Bank of England was founded in 1694. Every central bank on earth is doing a version of what the Roman mints did. Not clipping coins, but creating money, adjusting interest rates, managing expectations, trying to keep the fire warm enough to heat the house without burning it down. The tools are different, the computers are new, the math is more sophisticated, but the problem is 3,000 years old. When you check the price of groceries and something feels off, when you look at what your parents paid for a house and compare it to what you would pay today, when you feel like you are working harder than they did, but getting less, you are not imagining it. You are experiencing the same thing a Roman soldier experienced when he noticed his silver coins were turning copper. You are experiencing the same thing a farmer in medieval England experienced when the king raised taxes again, and the harvest wasn't enough. The ancient humans didn't solve inflation. They survived it. They adapted. They found other things to trust when official money broke down. They traded in grain, in fish, in paper, in promises, and so far, so have we. But the grain is still rotting in the granary, and there are still more receipts than grain to back them.